Hey, everybody. Welcome into the back room. I'm Andy Ostroy. We have Gretchen Carlson back with us. We'll chat with Gretchen in just a moment. But first, thanks for tuning in. We appreciate you listening, and we'd love to hear your comments. So email us at backroomandy@gmail.com and or post on our social media, and we'll read some feedback next time. And if you like the podcast, please rate and review and follow or subscribe, and you'll be notified every time we post a new episode. So Gretchen Carlson is an internationally recognized advocate for women's rights, whose bold actions against Fox News chairman Roger Ailes helped pave the way for the global #MeToo movement. A former CBS News and Fox News journalist, author, TED Talk alum, and champion for workplace equality, Gretchen was named one of Time magazine's 100 most influential people in the world. Gretchen is the co-founder of the nonprofit Lift Our Voices, which works to end silencing mechanisms in the workplace that keep toxic issues secret. She is also a frequent contributor to CNN and MS Now, a Fast Company contributor, and the author of the New York Times bestsellers Be Fierce and Getting Real. Her story of harassment and retaliation at Fox News has garnered international attention, including the Showtime miniseries The Loudest Voice and the movie Bombshell. Her signature achievement is the passage of the Ending Forced Arbitration of Sexual Assault and Sexual Harassment Act in March 2022, one of the biggest labor law changes in the last 100 years. Gretchen, welcome back into the back room.
Hey, good to be back in the back room, Andy.
So let's start with what happened yesterday. As of yesterday, members of the House Oversight Committee were allowed to go to the Department of Justice and start reviewing unredacted Epstein files, although with significant restrictions on access, electronics, etc. Congressmen Ro Khanna and Thomas Massie, who have been at the forefront of trying to get accountability and justice for the survivors, they found many instances of men whose names were redacted and who were implicated, including Victoria's Secret billionaire businessman Les Wexner, who was Epstein's primary client, and who is named in the files by the FBI as a co-conspirator. So why the hell was his name redacted?
Well, I think that this is going to be the biggest find from members of Congress being able to go over there. I mean, I think we all sort of implicitly knew that they were redacting these names, obviously, because there were big black marks from the senders of the emails. But this is not only against the law based on what Congress mandated for the Department of Justice to hand over, but this is just a complete slap in the face to not only the Epstein survivors, but to any survivor. And I would go as far as to say a complete slap in the face to every single American, because this is now in the forefront of many Americans' minds. They want the answers, and they're waking up this morning and they're saying, are you effing kidding me that they thought they could get away with not naming the names of these people? It is so infuriating that they're trying to cover up. And by the way, they knew that they were inviting members of Congress to come over there and look.
Right.
So, I mean, even if you're just like investigator 101, you would understand that they're gonna talk about this. And I'll add one more thing, and I hope he does this. Thomas Massie has said that he's going to go to the House floor and he's going to name off all of these people because he can, without any kind of consequence, because he's a member of Congress. And so I hope that that happens. But it's just one more example, Andy, of how this entire process has been cloak and dagger.
Yeah.
And Trump is completely responsible for allowing this story to get to these proportions of this magnitude of craziness, because it's just been drip, drip, drip. And every move has violated every crisis PR recommendation ever imaginable. So, yeah, I'm just exasperated by it today. But I'm also at the same time like applauding Ro Khanna and Thomas Massie. By the way, they should get the Nobel Peace Prize, okay?
They might.
Because of what they are doing for survivors, number one, but for the American public to have justice on what's in these files.
Yeah, I heard Massie speak last night about his findings, and he was saying that Pam Bondi is coming before the committee on Thursday. He's hoping that she will do the right thing and divulge information or name names.
I wouldn't hold my breath.
I'm not holding my breath on that. And so he was asked if he would be naming names on the House floor eventually, and he said, yeah, I could do that. if the survivors asked me to, and if we don't get anywhere with Bondi and the Department of Justice. So I think ultimately it's going to have to come to that, because this Department of Justice, this administration, clearly has zero intent to reach any kind of accountability and seek justice for the survivors.
Two other thoughts about what you just said. First of all, now we know that Kash Patel probably perjured himself.
Absolutely.
6 months ago when he said nothing here to see, right?
No co-conspirators to prosecute.
And number two, Senator Cynthia Lummis, Republican, said last night, well, I see that there's a 9-year-old, in these files. So now I'm suddenly paying attention. And now I really do think that, we could rip this apart. Like, you're just starting to pay attention now, right? To these horrific crimes, just because, I'm not just saying just because there's a 9-year-old, but you know what I mean? Like, there were 14-year-olds. And so kind of, what's the difference? Like, so they're all horrific. So why are you suddenly being concerned about this now? But to my bigger point of what I just said earlier, if you now have a Republican senator who's saying, now I want to get to the bottom of this, you have just opened up Pandora's box again now to get all members of Congress wanting more hearings, more explanation. So again, if you thought this story was going away and you could fool people by putting a black mark through their names, it's not. It is not going away. And I don't think Pam Bondi's going to say anything. I mean, she's going to spend the next 48 hours trying to figure out how to not say names or taking the fifth or whatever. Remember, she had all the binders and then there was nothing to see suddenly.
Well, what's interesting is that, I don't know if you noticed this too, but it seems like in the last week and a half, we've not seen Bondi. We've seen a lot of Todd Blanche, but we've not seen Bondi. What do you think is going on there?
Oh, I think that's completely on purpose because of the way she mucked up, the whole Epstein files saga last year. Even Susie Wiles, the chief of staff to Donald Trump, in that ridiculous article where she sort of spoke her mind, I guess, she said that she was good friends with Pam Bondi, but she mucked it up.
Yeah.
So I think that they're trying to hide her from this story. And remember, Todd Blanche was the one that was sent down to interview Ghislaine Maxwell at the prison, who then miraculously ended up in, playing with puppies and doing yoga in a Texas prison, low security, has no right to be there. And by the way, when she yesterday pled the fifth, saying she wasn't going to say anything, she deserves to go back to a maximum security prison if she's not going to say what she knows. And I'll add to that, the week before, in a January court filing, it became public that she had claimed that there were 25 co-conspirators of Jeffrey Epstein that got secret deals with the DOJ to avoid prosecution. So which one is it yet again?
Well, she's a convicted liar, but she also just put a bribe on the table.
Yeah.
I will exonerate President Trump if I get clemency. I think we're both old enough to remember when stuff like that could really get you in trouble at the Department of Justice. Not anymore.
No, that was because she knows that that's still out there. I'll add yet another point, Andy, in my exasperation today. Why is President Trump, why has he not taken pardoning her and clemency off the table? Why has he not?
Well, I think it's obvious.
And by the way, if any reporter has the audacity to ask that at the next press briefing, imagine how they'll be annihilated, because every female reporter that has bothered to ask anything, rightfully so, about the Epstein files has been piggy, has been stupid, has been every name in the book because they've had the audacity to do their job. But the question to him that should be posed today is, why are you allowing Ghislaine Maxwell to continue to ask you for clemency and pardoning, that she'll suddenly give us information? Take it off the table. There's no reason why that is even still on the table. Although when you look at who he's pardoned before, maybe he's still considering this. I've said on the record, I think there'll be an insurrection if he pardons her. But just take it off the table then, so she can't use it.
Well, I agree with you. I think reporters should not only ask that question, but a boatload of other questions they're not asking. But you know that if they ask it, it'll be, yeah, well, I don't know. We're looking at that. Like it'll be his classic word salad where you go, why are you looking at it? Like she's a convicted sex trafficker. Why would you be looking at it? And so it almost doesn't matter what questions get asked because he'll just do his classic word salad. And I don't think it breaks through the way it should. And you're right. He's considering a pardon because he's corrupt. He's criminal. And maybe that quid pro quo is exactly what he wants and needs.
Yeah, and it's also interesting a finding about him that came out last night too from Julie K. Brown, who's been doing, wonderful reporting on this for 2 decades. She reported that there was a police officer down in Florida back in the, early 2000s that had spoken to Trump, and that he admitted now that he knew the kind of behavior that Epstein was up to. I forget if this was 2006, 2007. And this is, he has been on the record as saying that he never knew what Epstein was up to. He also, in this interview with the police down there, had said that Ghislaine Maxwell is a monster and she's really the one that needs to be, dealt with and put away. So if he does a press briefing, he's going to get that question too. And I'll push back a little bit, Andy, on how you could, if you were a reporter, how you could get him to answer the pardoning question is, why do you want to continue to allow Ghislaine Maxwell to be able to use this over your head? Like make it a thing where because he hates not being in power, right? So make it sound weak if he doesn't.
Right.
If he doesn't say no to the pardon. And you have to have the reporters continue to do the follow-up question on the same topic. Because if they're given one question and then you go on to, Venezuela, then you're not going to get anywhere with it.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. The argument could also be made that him not putting an end to this question of will he or won't he pardon her, it's not good for him to have Ghislaine Maxwell out in the public sphere as a reminder to what Epstein did, to what she did, and to what people suspect he and other alleged co-conspirators have done. So the whole thing just doesn't make sense. I mean, you joked about crisis management before. Like, if we were running a crisis management firm, we would literally say, okay, here's the plan going forward. Everything you've done so far, stop. Because exactly. it makes me want to ask you, do you think it's hubris or just absolute incompetence how they've handled this? Is it defiance or are they just dumb?
I think it's both. And I think I've said this before on the air when I'm doing commentary. You take an example of immigration where you had the majority of the American public that wanted tighter crackdowns, okay? That's one of the major reasons Donald Trump was reelected. And then you look at what's happened in the last year and how this administration has implemented that. That is where nothing appears to work, right? I mean, when you look at how he's just plummeted in the polls with regard to what the American public thinks about the immigration tactics of ICE.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like they take a good idea and what the majority of Americans seem to be on the same page with them on, and they totally F it up in implementation. Mm-hmm. And so one then has to go back to the first Trump administration and say that those were lifelong Washington people that were advising him,
mm-hmm.
right? And you had chaos, but you didn't have this kind of chaos, right? He was being reeled in. Now, granted, he got rid of those people soon thereafter, but mm-hmm. he, for the most part, brought in another Washington person, and that person tried to reel him in. In this administration, you have none of that.
No.
And I think that if I were to analyze this over the last 10 years, that's where you have this complete mismanagement of what appeared to be a good idea and just going into chaos. And we could take every single topic, Andy, and talk about it in that way. The economy.
Absolutely.
Tariffs, the Epstein files, anything that matters to Americans, we could take that same argument to.
I have been saying consistently since the election in 24 when a lot of people were jumping off the roof, that they are these are the words I've used. They are going to be the gang that can't shoot straight. And that is what ultimately will save us and save our democracy. And to your point a minute ago, that's exactly what we've seen. Whether it's any promise he made, good or bad, popular or not, they can't execute because they can't get out of their own way, because his cabinet and his senior aides are just a bunch of gross incompetence and criminals. I mean, they're all corrupt. And so that's why he's lost. Everybody was talking about how, oh my God, the young men, they moved to the right. Oh my God, Hispanics moved to the right. He's lost the Hispanics. He's lost young men, young people. He's completely lost independence. And then we learned this week that there's a 30-point swing where he's now losing non-college whites. I mean, think about that.
I know. Yeah, and then you want to factor in enthusiasm for elections, which is a whole different way of looking at it. But it's incredibly important, especially for the midterms, because whichever party is feeling more enthusiasm, right, amongst the voters, is likely going to be the victorious party because you have fewer voters in the midterm election. Then you also factor in that Trump's not on the ballot, right? And that was a huge indicator of enthusiasm for MAGA to get out and vote. So yeah, I mean, it goes back to, if any corporation, a Fortune 500 corporation, operated in this manner, they'd be out of business in a nanosecond, right? And I'll just not like I want to throw Trump a bone, but they actually have done well on the border for what the voters wanted. So if I'm speaking from what the majority of Americans said they wanted when they voted Trump back in, he actually has cracked down at the border, right? But that's not what they focus on. So again, they muck it all up. And then he gets all mad because he didn't win the Nobel Peace Prize, because he's not being acknowledged for stopping all these wars and for his success in this and that, because you muck it up in every other way. And that's the part that's missing here. So to your point of, is it hubris or incompetent? It's both. It's like the whole thing put together, because there's really nobody steering the ship. It's like if you had all yes men inside of a company and on your board, that company's going to fail. And if I watch another cabinet meeting where they all go around and for 2 hours tell him how wonderful he is.
Well, you know what's funny? Because I try to find the comedy in anything because it keeps me sane. And I've done, my whole life, I've had to look through the lens of comedy. Yeah. When I watch those when I watch those cabinet meetings, they are comedy meetings. What I love to watch is, like, I'm over the sycophants, the ass kissers. I love watching him feigning surprise at the ass kissing, right? So it's almost like the same joy I get when I watch, like, the Oscars and they focus on all the nominees, and I watch to see the loser and how they're going to react. That fake.
Oh, yeah.
They're dying on the inside, but they're just trying to. They know the camera's on. So when Lutnick or whoever, or Scaramucci calls him Buttlick and Nutlick, two great nicknames. So when they say something, they fawn all over him. He's like, It's like, no. There's no You basically told them to say this.
Yeah. It's a requirement to be in the cabinet.
Yeah.
Whoever thought that expertise just went out the window, and it's just butt kissing that gets you to that position. One other thing I'll add, though, and I don't mean to be Debbie Downer on this, but you were talking about the polls and how they've just swung completely in the opposite direction of if the election were to be held today. I do still worry about young men. Back to the Epstein topic. I still worry about how they have been, for lack of a better word, brainwashed by podcasters and,
But they flipped. The big influential ones have flipped on him.
They have, but the Nick Fuentes of the world, the white nationalists, I worry that while we're seeing this flip in the polls, that a lot of that has gone into the hearts and souls of our young men.
Some of them, or perhaps even most of them, for sure. But as you know, these days, our elections are won and lost on the margins. And if 25% of the young men, 20%, even 10% abandon him. That could move the needle when you consider
Right.
all the other constituencies that the Democrats
Right.
have.
And you're talking about who gets elected. I'm talking about how we survive
Oh,
culture.
culture. Yeah, that's
Yes.
that's a whole, that's deprogramming. And that, but look how fast so many of his constituencies that put him over the finish line have already abandoned him. I don't know if it takes that long for people to realize, you know what, that man broke my heart. He lied to me, and he's just full of shit. And the more Joe Rogan, the more Andrew Schultz say that and question these policies, young men they care less about politics than they do about cool podcasters like Joe Rogan. So, I agree with you, but I don't think they're a lost cause, but it is culturally a phenomenon that we have to deal with for sure.
Yes, because I totally agree with you on policies that you can be swayed back 180 degrees in a short period of time. My concern is like deeper of young men, I think, liked the Joe Rogans of the world because they were telling them that women shouldn't be equal,
Right.
and that men should have more power again at work, and that it should remain a patriarchal society, right?
Mm.
Those are harder things to turn back the clock on.
Yeah. Well,
It's
those things may never go away.
I know, and that's
Sadly.
my bigger Debbie Downer concern today.
Yeah.
I know maybe in the short term we got to try and swing the electorate, but in the longer term, with regard to how we look at women in society in particular, I still am going to be worried.
You mentioned earlier that if Maxwell got clemency or a pardon, that there would be an insurrection. I tend to agree with that. But how much of this do you think is breaking through to MAGA in the way we all want it to? Because if we remember, this, for some strange reason, this Epstein scandal is the thing that gets their, underwear in a snit. And, thank God there's something that a hill that they want to die on. And he promised them, there's this rich, powerful, elite, deep state cabal of sex trafficking Democrats and whoever, and where you put me in White House and you put the Republicans back in Congress, and we're going to take down this deep state, and we're going to get justice and throw all these perverts in prison, blah, blah, blah. Now, of course, he's like you said, nothing to see here, folks, and they've been upset. But the last week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, there's so much that you would think they will and should be enraged about. Do you think it's breaking through that way to at least a part of them?
No, because I don't think they've ever really cared about the survivors. First of all, I'll just say that. I think they cared about what you just laid out, which was bringing down a bunch of Democrats. And then secondarily to that the MAGA is, very much feeling like they suddenly, nobody ever looked out for them, right? And so Trump started to do that and started to elevate their power in society, and that he was going to bring down the deep state. So I think those two things, I don't think that I think they're less interested in it now if they see that other Republicans might be brought down. And the only thing that I can hope for is that it's the influencers that are breaking away. And I do think that they could have an impact on them. But now I'm starting to think that MAGA maybe doesn't even want to get to the bottom of the Epstein files anymore. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, from the people I've spoken with who came out of MAGA, to them, it's a big deal.
Okay.
And they say it's always been about the kids. I think you're right. I mean, look, I remember at Trump rallies the first time, and I'd see women wearing T-shirts with an arrow pointed, and it was like, he can grab my, what, anytime.
Oh,
I'm like,
God.
really? What about your 13-year-old daughter? Can you grab hers too? So I think you're right. I think they view the whole survivor thing way differently than you and I do. But there is something that I was told that is just this abuse of children that just goes to the core. And so again, I'm hanging my hat on if there's just one thing that they focus on that upsets them, great, and let it be this. But it's hard to tell. His popularity among Republicans is still up around 90%. So it's does anybody care on the right about any of this stuff? I don't know.
See, I think once it went into the full American public sphere, meaning, a lot of these things that you and I think about daily are only inside the Beltway, right?
Yep.
But this story could have been kept inside the Beltway because it was only MAGA talking about it, right? And they were talking about conspiracy theories with regard to it. But then because Trump kept keeping the story alive, then it spread out into the general public. So if you went on the street right now and asked somebody in Times Square, have you heard of the Epstein files? Like 90% of Americans are going to say yes. Mm-hmm. And so to me, that was the end of silencing this story. Because there's nothing that's in the public sphere that people would know. They don't even know who the vice president is, okay?
Right. Yeah, you're 100% right.
So it's filtered out into now it's like, it's a cultural it's on social media. It's like what people are talking about. It's water cooler for you and me in the olden days. So does it really matter if MAGA is pushing it anymore? Because it's all out to so many other Americans who are asking about it. So that's the way I'm looking at it now. I don't really care what MAGA thinks about it anymore. Mm-hmm. I mean, I like when the influencers start to ask questions about it. I think that's impactful. But like for a voter down in, Alabama, Arkansas, Ohio, wherever they are, that's MAGA, I'm not sure that's flipping the needle anymore. I think because it's so far into the general public now,
right,
that it's way past MAGA carrying this or caring about it. Just my analysis.
That's a good point. In our last couple of minutes is a couple of observations I want to throw at you from Massey and Khanna going to the Department of Justice yesterday. The first thing is they spent 2 hours and they went through 40 documents. There's millions of documents. Look what they found in 2 hours in 40 documents, which begs the question, what the hell is in the rest of them? But what's interesting is that later that day, Todd Blanche announced that they are unredacting the Les Wexner stuff. So it's a rare admission of error, mistake, however you want to call it. But there is progress being made, and I think the administration is a little scared.
I think, again, that Ro Khanna and Tom Massey will go down as two of the biggest heroes. And by the way, we should all look at that for any kind of uplifting message where we infrequently have one, because they don't agree on probably anything else politically,
right,
but they have come together because they care about this. And so for me, that is one of the biggest messages that is coming out of this. And yeah, to your point, 40 documents, and they're forcing Todd Blanche to make that change. Imagine when they go through another 2 hours of documents, who else we're going to find out about.
Yeah, and Wexner wasn't the only one. There's 5 other names, including some Sultan. And so, yeah, I think they just got to keep going back. I mean, yesterday was the first day they're allowed to go in, and they're going back today, and others have to go back too. And I think, like you said, the DOJ knew the Congress people were coming. So it's like, you can't hide this shit forever. And
now you have Nancy Mace going there today. And the one person that I wish could go there who can't is Marjorie
Taylor Greene. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, talk about a transformation story. We can do a whole podcast on that next time.
We certainly can. Gretchen, always fun and always insightful. Do come back again soon.
Okay, great to see you.
Take care. This episode was produced and edited by me, Andy Ostroy. It was co-produced by Maddie Rosenberg and Jen Hammoud for Radio Free Rhinecliff, with additional editing by Maddie Rosenberg, music by Andrew Hollander, and graphic design by Cricket Langell. And with a special thanks to our sponsor, The Epicurean. Again, thanks for listening. Please rate and review wherever you get your podcasts, and subscribe to the Backroom with Andy Ostroy YouTube channel, where you can watch full videos of our interviews. See you next time.